All right, let's dive into one of the most debated, most crucial events in all of biblical prophecy, the Abomination of Desolation. Now, for centuries, a lot of people have just assumed they know exactly when this thing happens. But what if a closer look at the actual text reveals a completely different timeline? We're going to treat this like a prophetic puzzle and see if we can snap all the pieces into place.
And you know this is a big deal because Jesus himself brings it up. He points all the way back to the prophet Daniel and tells his followers, hey, when you see this thing, the abomination, standing in the holy place, pay attention. It's a critical signpost.
So, yeah, this is not some obscure little prophetic footnote. Both Jesus and Daniel treat this as a massive, visible moment. And that means understanding its timing isn't just some academic exercise. No, it's absolutely vital for getting the sequence of final events right.
Okay, so to really get into this, we first have to look at what most people believe. Let's start by examining what's called the traditional midpoint view.
So where does this idea come from? Well, it's mostly from this one verse, Daniel 9:27. It says that in the middle of the week, and that's widely understood to be the 3.5-year mark of the final 7 years, this key figure is going to put a stop to the temple sacrifices. And what happens is, this traditional view kind of smashes two actions together. The assumption, and it's a big one, is that the sacrifices are stopped by the act of setting up the abomination. They're seen as one single dramatic event that happens right at the midpoint.
But this is where we have to pause and ask the big question. Does the text actually say that? Does it demand that these two events happen at the exact same moment? Or is there another way to read the evidence?
To answer that, we're going to have to put on our detective hats. We need to dig a little deeper into the book of Daniel itself, because you know what? That's where we find some incredibly precise and very interesting numbers.
Okay, first there's this really important idea we need to get our heads around. It's called prophetic telescoping. Think of it like looking at two mountain peaks in the distance. They might look like they're right next to each other, but in reality, there's a huge valley between them. Prophets sometimes see two related future events as a single picture, even if there's a time gap. Daniel does this with the resurrections. He sees them together, but we know from Revelation there's a 1,000-year gap. They belong together, but they aren't simultaneous. So keeping that telescoping idea in mind, check this out. This verse from Daniel 12, well, I'd call it the smoking gun. It connects the stopping of the sacrifice directly to the setup of the abomination, but it slaps a very specific number on the time frame between them. 1,290 days. Now, if you're into prophecy, you know the number you hear all the time for the beast's reign is 1,260 days. This number is exactly 30 days longer. That's not a typo. It really looks like this verse is measuring the duration between two separate events. And get this, when you look at different translations, it gets even clearer. While some use the word "and," which you could read as happening at the same time, more literal translations, like Young's, use words like "to" or "until." That makes it way more explicit. The 1,290 days measures the time from when the sacrifice ends until the abomination is finally put in place. Okay, so Daniel gives us a number, a very specific one. Now let's jump over to the book of Revelation because you'll see it provides the structure that makes this number make perfect sense. It's like finding the other half of the map.
So over in Revelation 11, we get this detail that the nations are going to trample the holy city for 42 months. This is the well-known period of the beast's authority. In 42 months, if you do the math, with a 30-day prophetic month, what do you get? Yep, exactly 1,260 days. That's the number we always associate with the beast's reign. And notice, it's 30 days shorter than the 1,290 days we just saw in Daniel. But here's the kicker. Right before John mentions those 42 months, he says the inner sanctuary is to be measured, or preserved. The outer court gets trampled, but the holy place itself is protected. Now think about that. How can the holy place be protected if the abomination of desolation is already standing in it, defiling it from day one? It can't. And if you flip over to Revelation 13, the timeline there totally backs this up. First, the beast gets his authority for 42 months. He wages war, he's in control. It's only after all that is described that the second beast shows up and causes an image, the abomination, to be built and brought to life. It clearly happens later in the sequence.
Okay, we've got our clues from Daniel, we've got our framework from Revelation. Let's put this puzzle together and see what the final picture looks like. So check out how this revised timeline works. At the midpoint of the 7 years, the daily sacrifice is stopped. Then for the next 42 months, that's 1,260 days, the beast has sanctioned authority and the city is trampled. But remember, the inner sanctuary is preserved. At the end of that 1,260 days, his official authority runs out. And then 30 days after that, for a total of 1,290 days from the midpoint, the Abomination of Desolation is finally set up. It all fits.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's huge. It means the Abomination of Desolation is not the starting pistol for the Antichrist's 42-month reign of terror.
No, it's actually his final desperate act of self-deifying defiance. It's a defiant overreach after his God-sanctioned period of authority has officially expired. It's an act of collapse, not an act of consolidation.
You see, this totally reframes how we should think about these events. Stopping the sacrifices is just denying access. It's not the same as actively putting an idol in the holy place. And exercising authority that was delegated to you is completely different from a final defiant act of declaring yourself God after your time is up. They are two distinct events, separated by time.
So let's just do a quick rundown of the evidence. Daniel 9 telescopes the events, showing them as one picture. But Daniel 12 separates them with a specific number, 1,290 days. Then Revelation 11 protects the sanctuary for the first 1,260 of those days. And Revelation 13 shows the abomination is built later in the sequence. It's actually beautiful how it works. Daniel gives us the precise numbers, the timing, and Revelation provides the narrative structure that explains what's happening during that time. The two books lock together perfectly. And that leaves us with this one last, really big question to chew on. If the Abomination of Desolation isn't the grand inauguration of the beast's power, but rather a final, defiant spasm as his kingdom is collapsing around him, how does that change our entire understanding of the very nature of the final crisis? It reframes the whole thing,